they are part of the contract of the settlement agreement when and if that ever gets extended or actually gets the full extension that they want before then. They are legally obligated to do things. I think it's basically wrong for Oroville, which is an economically disadvantaged community, to be put at a disadvantage because that contract has not been extended through no fault of our own, despite the fact that DWR has never did a good job at performing at their end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, that is the only blue speaker card that I have. Chairperson Fowler?
Present.
Committee Member Pittman?
Here.
Committee Member Reynolds? Committee Member DeLong?
Here.
Committee Member Thompson?
Here.
Advisory Committee Member C?
Here.
Advisory Member Young?
Here.
Advisory Member Steindorf?
Here.
Advisory Member Knaus?
Here.
And Advisory Member Wright?
So everybody had a chance. On item number 6, or excuse me, 5, I'm new at this, so I don't know if I'm going about this the proper way, but the Oroville Chamber of Commerce, it still says the amount is $60,000 because of the low funds available. I think it was agreed upon $30,000. Do we need to correct that? The vote was for-
Chairperson, if when you vote to approve the amendments, you can approve as amended. I will fix that. Thank you.
Is there a motion? I make a motion that we approve the non-agenda items, or the, excuse me, the consent calendar. There you go, thank you.
With the edit.
With the edit.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed?
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 1 absent.
Okay. Moving to presentation. We're going to end this a little bit.
Yes, we're going to change the order around a little bit. We would like to move DWR, the background, to last. We can get through our other presentations, and move Oroville Downtown Business Association to first, since they have a prior engagement, if that's okay with this body. Great.
Absolutely.
So our first presentation is going to be from Chrissy, who's representing the Oroville Downtown Business Association, updating us on her open agreement.
Thank you. TJ will also be joining me, who came right in time. Do you have the presentation available? And thank you guys for making the adjustment to allow us to move forward in the agenda. I very much appreciate that. So Downtown Oroville has a current agreement with this body in order to do Miners Alley revitalization work. I don't have the clicker.
Well, and it's a PDF. So we're gonna...
We'll have to scroll.
Okay, thank you. The project intends to revitalize Miners Alley, make it a unique space for our downtown area, which can also be used for events and fuel additional activity within the downtown district.
The overview at this point is the objectives in revitalization of Miners Alley included, we've done the cleanup and add refresh paint and aesthetics to the adjacent buildings. We've retained paint for any future vandalism or issues that we have. We've done the gooseneck lighting to attract attention, which you'll see later in the slides as well. Just a lot of positive feedback from the community. We're in the process of hardware for supplies for art shows, so we're working on concepts for that. Decorative fencing along the alleyways to replace the chain link, and that is going to come after the archways are done. And that goes along with the archways to match the current ones.
The archways were a little bit difficult because that font isn't a standard font, so trying to replicate something that you don't have original plans for was interesting. However, Sean Pierce has worked really hard to make sure that they're as close to the original arches as possible.
Fund for 8 to 12 events in the alleyway. The project completion ceremony is in the works. When we are completed, we'll have the ceremony, and then Myths of Orville History Dinner is in the plans to utilize it in the alleyway as well. For future, we're thinking potentially down the road for Feather Fiesta Days as a fundraiser to utilize the alleyway either for the beer garden or some sort of event that is related to food and beer or wine. We've purchased tables, standing heaters, umbrellas, and other supplies for events, which will be able to cross-pollinate between events that we have in the alleyway and utilized for other downtown events, which is nice. We are in the process of working with event coordinators and looking for someone to fill that slate. And I apologize, I don't know about the bollards at the end. We'll have to work in correlation with the city of Oroville, but working for concepts to keep vehicular traffic out of the alleyways while we're using it for pedestrians. And there's a few concepts on those that we've looked at. Okay, so down to budget. Everybody likes to talk about money. So you can see here where what we've allocated to and spent. And if you have any questions on any of that, we can answer questions that you might have.
They're being fabricated at this time, so we haven't paid, we haven't received the invoice or paid for that yet.
Businesses still get supply trucks used?
There are, so you have Gallery Interiors does utilize it. So it'll be a relationship with the business owners and, you know, either allowing them access or working with them for another opportunity to do deliveries. Plus we have restaurants. We have Brian's restaurant on the other end that does receive. And I'm not sure about Chaz, but yeah, the alley does get utilized sometimes for.
When you talk about ballards,
No, removable ballards, so we can remove them during business hours or give access to the business owners to remove them and then put them back in place. It's a growing concept. I think it's probably more in relationships to what the city see as it, the community, and as it develops, but definitely removable. Yeah.
One of the things that downtown really values is using these funds as local as possible. So far for all of our invoices, we've utilized entirely local contractors or individuals. So that's included people like Color Fast Painting, who's actually new to the area. We're excited to get him established here. Williams Electric, Sean Pierce is working on the archways and will also be working on the fencing. We've already contracted in the past with Jake Early as one of our artists. And then we have two other coordinators or contractors that we work with that both live within city limits. So we're really excited, especially as a small business association, to support other small businesses. It requires some flexibility, of course. However, we really value that. We wanted to give you guys a glimpse of what feedback has been from the community so far. So as you know, you've seen, we have not completed this entire project. We've just only begun it. And so far, we've received a lot of really positive engagement and feedback about this initiative. So this was one post that we did just when they were installing the lights. As you could see, it reached over 8,000 people, had over 1,000 people engage with it, 190 positive interactions. And then we also have a number of business owners and community members who have commented or shared with their excitement. So even at the bottom, the one Kyle Hayes says, "This is dope. I want to do a vintage pop-up market in Miners Alley. I think it would be fun for the community." So this is one of our business owners. He owns Gold City Vintage, and it's really, if you go to the next slide, it's really spurred additional communication and ideas from community members. Aaron Lackey, who's another downtown photographer, is really excited about it. They do a number of photo shoots in the alley. Gracie Stewart is also a small business owner. And then former SBF leader Bob Marciniak also saw it and was excited about it. And then I found one of one person. It just happened to pop up on my feed, and I thought it was interesting that even without artwork and without all of the improvements made, people are starting to use it as a destination and as a place that they're proud of, and they want to take pictures with their family and share with the community. So if you go to the next slide, one of the other initiatives we're working with is with Explore Butte County, doing a historic themed map of points of interest throughout Oroville. And one of those, so this is just a glimpse, you don't get to see the whole thing because the map isn't released yet. But we are excited that Miners Alley is being featured as really a point of interest for tourism and for community members to really take pride in and to make it really a staple within our community. We're excited to do that through the revitalization work and also through the upcoming events in it. So thank you, guys. Any other questions?
Great.
Great. If you don't mind, I'm going to go to work. Thank you all. Thank you.
Next, we have in line, we have Sean with us from Feather River Recreation and Park District, who has 2 open agreements with this body.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'll start with the Feather River, the Nature Center Trail. That project is on schedule for the environmental permits. The 1,600 permit through the Fish and Wildlife Service is complete, and the Central Valley Flood Control Board permit that was submitted this summer, they had about 30 days for comments to see if we needed anything else for that permit. They didn't ask for anything else, so that's on track to be done later next month. So per the previous schedule, as soon as those permits are in place, we could start construction this winter, weather pending. Often that's difficult on the river, though, and so it'll probably move to next spring. So that's good for that project to be on track. The Nelson Pool project, you may recall the last change order that we had to work with was the top of the pool wall that had just started to degrade after the water had gotten into the concrete, and it turned out to be about a $90,000 change order to rebuild that cap around the entire border of the pool, which our rec district ended up paying for that part of the project. That is now complete. All the concrete around it that needs to be gone is out of the way. The vaults for the water play area are in place. The recirculation system for the pool is in place. And they're in process now of starting to put the drain lines in that'll go to the water play area itself, and then that equipment can start to go up. Through that delay with the change order for the wall cap, the engineering it took to put that in place, city permitting to have that approved. A construction crew had 2 COVID cases as well, and then weather. It's now bumped the project 1 more month to the end of January. So your next meeting, I'll have some real pretty pictures of that water play area coming up, and we'll be close to complete. All right.
Committee Member Thompson.
Thank you. Glad this is moving forward. Thank you for working on it. Question for you. When this project was approved, Dave, how long ago was that? Wow.
2018.
Before 2018.
BC, before COVID. There was a promise made by South Featherwater, anyway, you guys' district, or Feather River, FERPID.
Right.
To be looked into making it available for families that are low income to have a discounted price on entry. Has there been any traction, any forward movement on that, any investigation on possibilities for that?
You know, that was with the previous director. I've not seen that in the agreement, and we have not looked into that yet, but I can when it's needed. And you know, right now we haven't even set a fee structure. It's $3 to get into the pool right now, which could change with the water play area. But We'll look into that option. There's
Okay.
some new voucher programs that are available as well for low-income families, so maybe that'll work for that entry fee.
Great, yeah, just, $3 for some of us, because it seems trite, but I know, so for some families, every dollar counts, so,
Sure. Okay. I'll look into that.
thanks.
Anything else, anyone?
Other questions? Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next, we have birdcage listed, but I don't see the representative in the building. So we've reached out to her. We'll move it to the bottom, and if she's not present, we'll get a written update to this body. So next, we have Feather River Center. So we have Brad with us from the Feather River Aquatic Center.
All right, thank you for having us. I was going to bring up what our seasons look like up to date, October to October, and then I'm going to show you what the SBF funds have helped us create, our website, and all our social media platforms. So this was a tough year. Smoke and heat kind of cut our season a little short. We ended up serving 2,800 kids from the Oroville and Butte County area. And $40,000 was given to us by North Valley Community and State Parks to provide scholarships. So all these kids that participated this year were relatively free. So it was a really big deal, brought lots of people out, schools. Anybody in the burn scar this year, including the new burn scars, were all free, including transportation. So that was a boom for us. Made a big deal this year. Our salmon tours, which we're in the third year of salmon tours, have taken off into becoming its own entity in itself. And we served 180 people coming down the river this year, including in the Salmon Festival. And I think our best thing is a picture's worth 1,000 words. So we have promotions now for our salmon tours that are getting, we got 30,000 hits this summer on our website, just for people looking. And it turns out a big majority of people are coming from out of the county. And that did not used to happen before. So Yuba, Sutter, Sacramento area, Plumas has become a big one too. So thanks to our funding, we're starting to really blossom. So if we could take a look at this. So I have two quick videos, minute, 90 minutes or 90 seconds. This is our salmon tour video. We had a professional videographer and used our SBF funds. So as you can see, that's a really good promotion for the city as well as for our programs. The next video is going to highlight a lot of the equipment and purchases that we've made with SBF funds. So when you look on this, I'm not going to pause it, but just notice whenever you see equipment there, I'd say SBF's responsible for half of our equipment and toys that we're using for our rental programs. So it's been a big hit. Everything new we see, fresh-looking life jackets, is all from these funds. Stuff that we hadn't had we've been living on the garage sale stuff for a long time, so this has been really nice. So that kind of highlights our 2021 so far.
I have a quick question for you over here. Is the Butte Sailing Club still in, or active in existence? Do you know?
Yeah, they're actually kind of growing as we speak. They took a big hit during the campfire, and their membership's gotten bigger, and we're back to sailing lessons, which we didn't have for 2 years.
Great, okay,
So
thanks.
back in business. Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. Aaron's not here today. So the parking and some of the data we're collecting on the place, especially with the lake being hardly usable, it's twofold. We're getting more, this summer was, if the smoke and those issues hadn't happened, I think it would have probably been the biggest season in our history. So yeah, the place is packed.
And kind of my question is, because people that don't have boats, that's one of the few places they get to go. And the
Yep.
beach is, and so many people were enjoying it then.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. Parking, non-existent parking sometimes.
Wow.
Which
okay.
we've never seen, so.
How was the goose situation? Is it still an issue?
They still run the place. And,
I just remember complaints about,
oh,
they
yeah,
didn't
it's-
use the porta potties. The geese
Yeah.
didn't.
Shame on them.
We
Yeah.
live, yeah, they're our neighbors, and we have to clean up after them constantly.
All right.
And so we're on the agenda for
Extension.
and a request for an extension. A couple of the projects that we were going to do in 2021, due to COVID and a variety of reasons, just couldn't happen. So we're just trying to forward our money to get this done for the 2022 season.
I have one question for you.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory, are you eligible or ineligible to receive any kind of funding or grants from Department of Boating and Waterways? Do they assist you in any way?
Yeah,
Okay.
I get funded every year.
Good. And how so? What did they do?
So last year I got $42,000
For?
from Department of Boating and Waters, exclusively for programming for disadvantaged youth and water safety programs.
Okay.
No equipment, no capital improvements, is strictly put back into the community.
And can you tell me with the, was it 2,800 kids that came? Were they mostly of the greater Oroville area? Were they from Paradise? Were they from Chico, Gridley? What's that number look like?
Yeah, so, and this is over the last few years, always majority Oroville, because the school districts here have kind of caught on to us by now, and word of mouth has spread. So we're getting hundreds of school kids coming. And then on the side, I'd say Paradise, Gridley, and Chico, I would consider about last on our
Really?
attendance.
Okay.
Yeah, which is really interesting.
Oh, good.
Good. It's good to hear.
Thank you so much for your hard work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
So we're going to continue on. Next, we have Amber with us from the Chamber of Commerce.
Do I get the clicker?
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to be presenting on 2 contracts today. First off, I'll be presenting on the Chamber's tourism contract, which is just to promote general tourism in Oroville, and then the second one will be on the Salmon Festival contract. So here is our agreement. So this is going to cover our entire 2020-2021 contract, which went from July of 2020 and ended August 31st of this year. And then at the end, I'll give a little update on what we're doing with our current contract that was reduced. So our SBF contract covers our websites. The main website is visitoroville.com. The content from that website is also shared on orvillechamber.com and lakeoroville.net. Through social media, we share tourism information through Facebook. In emails, we do highlights on our weekly e-bulletins and notifications and e-blasts for different events. And then through our visitor center, we take tourism calls, tourism walk-ins, and answer tourism emails. So I'm going to go over some analytics over the different ways we disseminate tourism information. So through our website on visitoroville.com, in that tourism year minus July, August, and September, our website provider that we use had an update which ended up wiping all analytics prior to October 2020, which was not helpful. But even without those 3 numbers, you can see there's still positivity rates. So, for example, on visitoroville.com, we had unique visits of 12,631 from October to August of this year. That's an increase of 5,000 from my last year's report on tourism. Same with page views. We saw an increase of 7,000 page views. On lakeoroville.net, where we also share tourism information, we had an increase of 9,000 unique visits and 11,000 page views. You'll see on orvillechamber.com, we actually had a decrease, but what we used to do in history, all this information used to be housed on orvillechamber.com. So people were very used to just going to that website. Now that people are getting more used to using Visit Oroville and Lake Oroville for tourism information, and Oroville Chamber mainly for chamber commerce business information, I think that evens out the numbers and shows why we've had a drop in views on orvillechamber.com. So on visitoroville.com, one of the big things we do is our signature events pages, which has grown in the last year. Originally, we were just doing the main city events, the Wildflower and Nature Festival, 4th of July, Parade of Lights, Feather Fiesta Days, and Salmon Festival. But then as the year progressed, I started adding every festival that is an annual festival. So stuff like the Snow Goose Festival that affects our area, Arbor Day Festival, Olive Festival, Juneteenth celebration, 4th of July was already there, the farmers market information. And then in this coming year, I'm also planning on adding Restaurant Week, since that's a now annual thing that Explore Butte County is doing that affects our area, and Museum Weekend. For social media, we've gained over 900 followers since the beginning of this contract. Just tourism-related posts, we did 316 posts. We did have a decrease in reach of about 19,000, but over this last contract period, COVID's still been very relevant, so normally we would be spending funding on boosting social media posts for festivals, but we were advised that maybe during COVID times we shouldn't reach outside our local area to bring a ton of people in. So for example, with Salmon Festival, normally we'd have advertising in San Francisco, Sacramento, and that we kept more to the Butte County area for this year. But on a positive aspect, our engagement went up by 25,000, which shows how much more relevant our posts are becoming in tourism. People are engaging with it, remembering it, sharing it. So I think that's a really positive analytic there. In email, we sent out 47 different emails that were tourism related during this period. We got 19,000 more opens over this last period, and we got 700 plus more clicks on links that link out to different tourism related events throughout the year. And these graphs kind of show you where the higher dips are, lower dips are throughout the year. You'll notice in like September and December, those dips go up because that's when we have our annual events. Oh, too far. So here's an example of some local events that we share out to the public to get people to come join us. For example, Fort Bay Aquatic Center, Feather River Rexham Park District with their concerts and parks. Oroville Fireworks is one of the community festivals, but we really work to share all events. So if you ever, as I was going through these numbers, we share live music at all our local restaurants, restaurant specials. We share any community event that'll bring people into town to enjoy Oroville. And then at our visitor center, some other ways we disseminate information. We do have 3 digital billboards that we keep up year long to promote the different events throughout the year. We respond to tourism phone calls, respond to tourism emails. We help tourists who stop by the visitor center, and we disseminate tourism information at community events. So we usually get booths at, for example, the Wildflower and Nature Festival, and hand out brochures and booklets to any visitors who come along. And that was the tourism contract. So any questions on that part?
Can you expand on the Snow Goose Festival? What have we done specifically?
So with the Snow Goose Festival, it is run by a Chico group, but they do tours in the Oroville wildlife area. So in the past, I would just share posts whenever those tours would become available. But now Explore Butte County also put some funds into promoting the Snow Goose Festival, and that's why I wanted to. We do get a ton of calls about the snow geese in the area, so wanted to include another page so I can go, here's where they are in Oroville. Come book a tour.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Amber, I can back you up on the calls that you get from out of the area. I remember one day a woman called up, and you could kind of tell she was from the Bay Area just by the way she talked. And she asked me, what time do the geese fly over?
I need to keep a specific log of geese fly times in the area.
What was your answer?
I think I was too floored to say anything. I was thinking, you dumb idiot. But I just said, I don't remember. It's a long time ago. I'm sure I made something up.
Amber, I know the trails around here, especially connected to the lake, have been pretty much closed down, and they're starting to reopen. Have you seen much interest in calls for trail riding and bike riding, that kind of activity?
Oh, yes. So we got the new Oroville Trails map from State Parks, and we got a box of 500, and it's almost empty already. Okay. And that's just from walk-ins, let alone people calling or emailing and us emailing the links to those trails. So, yes, very popular.
So you just see any group put together some kind of a trail event? I know the Bicycle Club used to have a ride once a year annual event. Has anybody been talking about that at all?
We haven't, and actually Shannon and I were talking about the Bicycle Club earlier, so I'm going to reach out to both Paradise Bikes and Oroville Bikes and see if there is any new club happening or event happening with the bicyclists in the area.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Amber.
Awesome.
Thanks, Amber.
Then I'll go on with Salmon Festival contracts. So this was our first year being the event coordinator for the Salmon Festival, so there aren't going to be as many comparative numbers to years past since this was our first year. So I want to go over some highlights of this year's Salmon Festival. We estimated there was about 9,000 in attendance this year. The public feedback from attendees was overall positive. We heard very few negative comments. Same with the vendors that we heard from. Most vendors reported average to above average sales this year, which I think is pretty good because certain things weren't able to happen. For example, the fish hatchery wasn't able to be open due to COVID restrictions. So we did have some losses in events, but we also had some additions, which I'll get to in a second. And then organizations who held fundraisers had positive experiences. For example, the Oro Dam Cruisers, who put on a car show. Originally, they were expecting about 30 people to show up because there was 2 other within the Butte County area car shows going on that day, and they had 114 people show up. Abby's Place, which is a fundraiser through the Father's House Church for a new handy accessible playground out on their property. They use the Kids Zone as their fundraiser, and they raised just over $6,000 for that fundraiser. And those are just a couple of the examples of positive experiences we had from the organizations who also participated. So some of the events that happened this year, we had the Friday night soiree, a salmon run, an art fair, a car show, kids zone, barbecue and smoked salmon for sale, crafts, a beer garden, the kayak trips, a street fair, live entertainment, and food and drinks. And now here's an overview of the budget. So this is a 2-slide thing. This is the overview of the expenses summary and the income summary. And I want to start out by what's not shown here. We want to thank Upstate Community Enhancement Foundation, who was the previous event coordinator. Through the years of running the Salmon Festival, they had acquired $40,000 in funds raised, and they transferred that over to us this year. So we're very happy to say that that $40,000 is still intact. And as I go to the next slide, we actually ran in the black and have more than that to be used in future salmon festivals. So even with the COVID year and less of an attendance as reported in past years, budget-wise, everything went really well, and the SBF funds just really helped with getting all the infrastructure and the work done to make the Salmon Festival happen this year. And then some analytics for this year's Salmon Festival. So on the website for the months of August and September, when we were running Salmon Festival advertising at visitorville.com, that website got over 6,000 unique views and 9,000 page views. On social media, we did 31 posts total to promote the Salmon Festival, and we have 2 pages now where we can promote that. So Upstate Community Enhancement Foundation also gave us the ability to own the Oroville Salmon Festival Facebook page. So there was 31 posts each on the Chamber and the Salmon Festival Facebook page. On the Chamber one, the reach was, just over 22,000, and engagement was just over 1,000. On the Salmon Festival page, we had a reach of about 14,000 and engagement of 609. Then through our email list, we had a total of 11 emails promoting the Salmon Festival. From those, we had 2,400 opens and 438 clicks. And then a quick marketing overview of how we marketed the Salmon Festival this year. So we marketed through, and I can pull it up to go into a little more detail than what's on the slide. On the website, we had the link for the Salmon Festival page, which is our main link we use throughout our social media, email, any of the other marketing avenues. Through social media, posting on those 2 pages, we shared posts through local groups like Oroville Current Events. Posts included updates about ticketed events, registration required events, sponsorship, vendor opportunities, and general Salmon Festival updates. In print advertising, we ran print ads through the Oroville Mercury Register/Chico ER for 2 weekends, and they also included digital advertising on their websites. We were also interviewed by the newspaper to promote the Salmon Festival as well. And then for other print advertising, we made flyers for distribution that stores could take in and distribute or display, and brochures for the day of that showed where all the activities were. We also had billboards and banners. We used our 3 digital billboards to promote the Salmon Festival, and physical banners that were hung all throughout Oroville. I went over how we advertised through email. And then in radio, we did advertising through KZFR and Deer Creek Broadcasting, and then we also had interviews through KZFR, Thunder 100.7, and Z-Rock. Then on TV, we were interviewed by both Channel 7 KRCR and Action News Now, and we had a video partnership with Oroville News Live, who would come and film updates with us, and we'd be able to share that through social media. And then also just our normal visitor center stuff, relaying Salmon Festival information through phone calls, emails, and visitors walking in. And then I just want to end this with thanking everyone who sponsored this year's Salmon Festival. This was all sponsorship through dollars, supplies, manpower, volunteers, time and effort. And then I also want to thank the events committee. It takes a lot of our local organizations to make the entire Salmon Festival happen. So I really want to thank everyone who made the Salmon Festival happen this year. Any questions?
What do you think for next year?
Bigger and better.
I mean, one of the key things is, of course, the fish hatchery being open for tours.
Yes.
Is that a possibility, or do you know yet?
We're hoping so. The reason they weren't able to this year was just since it is salmon spawning season, they couldn't risk any of their staff getting COVID, because then that would just mess up the entire salmon spawning season. So hopefully next year, as COVID rates hopefully go down, they'll be able to be open for tours again.
Oh. Thank you.
Well, I'll just say this, I had a great time, both Friday night and Saturday, and you guys worked hard. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
And everybody else who volunteered, and you guys know who you are, so I don't need to mention names, but I think it was a great turnout, and I wasn't expecting it to be that good, to be honest. And it was better.
It was a great turnout.
Yeah. Any other comments?
No?
Awesome.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Next, we have PJ with us from the Veterans Memorial Park Committee.
Hi, nice to see you all.
Hello?
Hi, PJ.
Want to thank you for making this project possible. It's been a little bit challenging, so I have my failure is not an option hat on today instead of my Veterans Memorial Park Committee. So first, some good news update. We, as Kent knows, we had some vandalism at the park earlier this year. Actually, somebody came and ripped out a bottom piece of granite on the wall and took all the little stars, or most of the little stars off, and sprayed the walls with gook. So that's been completely fixed now. I'm very happy to report that. We also replaced 5 tiles on the wall that had some spelling errors or just, general misinterpretations between people writing forms and finally getting there. So we're real happy those are all taken care of. And then as far as the project itself goes, we had installed the granite bench earlier this year, and the storm this past weekend just unveiled it for us by ripping off the cover. So we've just left it off so you can see it. I think if you all were on Facebook, you probably saw the fabulous picture that Jeff Shaner took right the day that it was installed of the reflection off the top of the bench. It's perfect reflection of the rest of the park off the bench. So go to the website sometime and check that one out. We, on our schedule, we're a little bit uncertain at the moment. The next step, the remaining step, is to pour the concrete in the very center section. All the other concrete is poured. We're waiting for one clarification from the architect, and we do have the flagpole. It's been at the county for quite a while. We have the American flag and the double-sided POW-MIA flag, which will be flown below the American flag on our 40-foot flagpole. And that will be going in soon. We had hoped before Veterans Day, but that might not happen depending on weather. So there are still a few more steps. We do have the bolts all in for the footings for the shade structure. And I think you all know, talked about this last time, the shade structure, when we sent it out to bid, turned out was going to cost multiple times more than we had in the original estimate. So that, the good news is that the county has now recorded the deed restriction for Proposition 68, and which segue to the sign that we have for funding, acknowledging the DWR, the state water contractors, and the SBF. That sign is very temporarily down, due to go up again this week. We are having to add the Prop 68 logo and some required verbiage to it, but so you should see that this week. As far as the shade structure goes, that'll happen in Proposition 68. We don't know that $400,000 of funding. We don't know how much that's going to take. That's going to be sent out to bid first. And then once we know what we have to work with, our next target is putting in the path to the Bugler, which is unrelated to this. But we will also be putting in steel benches, curved steel benches, under the shade structure. We can't order those until the shade structure is in, because the curves on them are custom, and we need to make sure everything's properly located. Some of those will be paid for by the SBF funding, and some by the Prop 68 funding. We're not sure how much. The county has ended up generously contributing some funds to this project. We're not sure exactly how much that is. We do have the lights for the flagpole all in, and those were a pricey item. But everything's looking good there. As far as our monuments, we'd committed $12,000 towards, as a match that, not required, but we did, for the pillar, for the two monuments that go by the flagpole. One is a dual Medal of Honor monument. There are two Medal of Honor recipients from Oroville, and they will both go on the same monument. And then the other monument is to the guerrilla, I will get this right, it is the U.S. Special Guerrilla Units in the Kingdom of Laos, who helped tremendously in the Vietnam War. And that design for that has all been completed now. I've been working with Chico with Granite and Marble Works, Andrew up there. And the stones are due in any day now, which is a really amazing, because of course we're getting everything from America, and this time that's really good, because he has a stack this thick on his desk of orders waiting to come from overseas, and they are 6 months to a year out, which is highly unusual, but that's COVID. So we're going to be building concrete pillars on which to mount these monuments. The pillars we thought would be built during this part of the project, and they will have to be built later, probably between this and the Prop 68. So that was not something we were expecting, but something we needed to do to manage the complexity of what you would think wouldn't be a complex little project. We still have a landscaping commitment of $9,000 and some odd dollars, so we're going to be looking into that now that we have some rain. Then as far as, I think that's pretty much it. If you have questions.
Anybody?
No, good job, PJ.
Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your diligence.
Thank you, PJ. Next, we have Jennifer with us from Birdcage Theater.
Hello.
I'm Jennifer Beers. I'm president of Birdcage Theater. We currently have an SBF grant through you guys. Just wanted to give you an update. As you know, our theater's been closed since March 2020. We did get the grant quite a while ago, and we've asked for a couple extensions, most COVID related. We started right around the time we got the grant, we did the musical Rock of Ages. We partnered with the State Theater. It was very successful. I used the funds to do a billboard, a digital billboard. I did a live radio feed through Z-Rock. The show was Rock of Ages. We did social media. We did newspaper. We also did a general ad for the theater at the movie theater called Behind the Movie. So we did generate a lot of new faces. I got extremely good feedback on our show. It was more attended than any show that I've ever seen. I've been president 10 years, or not president, but I've been a member of the theater for 10 years. We had some really great momentum going. It took us into the fall. We had a small show that I spent a little advertising. It was social media, some paper, because our theater is smaller, so we don't want to do as much as we do for our big shows that are at the state where we can hold more people. Our theater only holds about 65 people, so we tried to keep it more local for those. Obviously, we want to reach out for the bigger shows where we can hold more people over at the state. I did have slated a show that was supposed to be at our theater in April, and another musical, Footloose, in June that was supposed to perform at State Theater. Both got canceled. I did have the remaining of our $25,000 grant. We have $3,904 left. That money was slated for another billboard, a radio spot, and a couple other miscellaneous items. So I'm just requesting, and I'm not able to prepay those items. I do have Footloose rescheduled for June 9th through the 12th of 2022. My other show that I was going to do, I have not rescheduled yet, but those items were for Footloose that I have slated. So if I could just have the extension to be able to advertise for that show in 2022. I'm not able to prepay them so that I could take care of it early. The two vendors, it has to be prior to the to getting those items, so I'm not able to do it in advance. But that is all that I have. Unless you guys have questions.
Any questions?
Oh, thank you.
We have very little left on our grant, and I already have the money slated. I just
So
not able to
one
spend it quite
question
yet.
for you.
Yes,
So you said you've been participating for 10 years?
yes.
I have not been to the Birdcage since I saw the last production of Kismet.
Wow, that was a very long time ago.
Seems like not that long ago, but
Yeah, I've been on the board since 2012, and I've been president since, I think, 2018. So,
well, thank you.
you're welcome. Anything else?
Thank
I hope you come see Footloose in June.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that concludes our open contracts. Jennifer did mention wanting an extension. Their contract is good until April 2022, so if that's something she needs, we can bring back at the January meeting. So her and I can discuss that further. Any other agreements that this body has have not been opened yet, so they're pending. So I have 3 on my list that are currently pending, and that is the Rotary contract, the YMCA contract, and another Veterans Memorial contract. So the reason they don't have updates is because those contracts are still pending with signatures and everything. They haven't moved forward yet. So that concludes all open agreements with this body. Next, we have, if there aren't any more questions, is Eric C. with us that's going to give a background of the SBF, which was requested, I believe, 2 meetings ago before the special meeting. So we're catching up.
Okay, Eric?
Yeah.
Package looks like that we had submitted to FERC back in 2006. So that's it right there. It wasn't, when we talked about our application package, it wasn't just, an online form and a few documents. It was quite a bit of reports and estimates or assessments and our environmental impact report, of course, and just all of that documentation. So you can see the documents there on the table. That represents about 5 years of meetings with the state, public, and government agencies and other stakeholders. So that was our collaborative effort. Back when we started the relicensing process, it was a point made by in particular the locals here in the Orville area, that they wanted us to use the what was called at the time the alternative licensing process, which was a process that required a lot more front-end communication with the public, as opposed to the traditional process of relicensing, which was much more agency-driven, and the public input came much later in the process after the agencies basically made a bunch of decisions and then presented. So this allowed the opportunity to have a lot of meetings up front to get stakeholder input from the very beginning and then incorporate that into the process. So it's a much more involved process, a lot more meetings, a lot more staff time, but it was something that the community wanted us to do, and we did that, and that's what ultimately led to this licensing.
Is there anybody in that photo there that's
Still alive?
They're mostly still alive. As far as DWR,
Who's that? Do you know who it is?
yeah, Nicole Darby.
Didn't want to break the camera, huh?
The next slide, please. Okay, so this is a timeline of the relicensing proceedings. So I just wanted to point out a few highlights from this. I don't expect everyone to read every detail, but just to know that the process started in 2000. We started having some initial scoping meetings, and that led to developing work groups in different categories of the relicensing topics. So that was in that 2000, 2002 era. By 2003, we were well into our study plans and actually starting to get information back. And the group started actually talking about the projects that would come out of the relicensing, what we call the protection, mitigation, and enhancements. And during that time, there was a lot of discussion, especially in the 2004-2005 period, what we call the settlement discussions, because that was what was leading towards the settlement agreement. And so during that time period, the studies were completed, as were most of the negotiations. In very early 2006, the negotiations were completed, and we did sign the settlement agreement in March of 2006. Subsequent to that, in 2007, our license, the current license that we have, it expired. That was the 50th year of that license. Ever since then, FERC has been issuing annual licenses to us, so that was officially when the license had expired. And we've been operating on annual licenses ever since then, and will continue to do so until the new license is issued. And when I say annual licenses, that's just basically the status quo. Our current license just gets extended each year.
Eric, let me stop you real quick.
Sure.
And where you just mentioned the 2006, the complete negotiations and signed the settlement agreement, I don't think anybody realizes how big a deal that settlement agreement is. When you look at 50 agencies of every environmental concern ever thought about, anywhere in the world signed the same agreement. I remember the signing ceremony, we were all looking around the room like, how would you ever get this kind of people, or this group of people, from horsemen to trails people to water people to everybody in, on the scale, to sit down and sign the settlement agreement, except for one agency that didn't sign, which we know who that is, but it's just a kind of a monumental thing, and it's sad that it's gone this far, because that was a huge element. I just wanted to add that to your conversation.
Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate that, because there was a lot of times along the way where we weren't sure, things seemed like they were, going off the rails and everything
Oh,
else,
yeah.
but then there'd be a small group of people say, hey, wait a minute, you didn't think about this, and then we go back and, you're right, it took a while. And, it was pretty remarkable. And, there's a lot of momentum at that time, and, I'm hoping that we're gonna be able to get that going again sometime soon. So anyway, so and by the way, the asterisks on there are kind of milestone events that occurred during that period. So in 2007, FERC issued the final environmental impact statement. Later on that year, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issued a biological opinion, which is like the federal permit for our terrestrial species, bald eagles, giant garter snakes,
frogs.
Or vernal pools, yes,
frogs.
frog species, amphibians. And so that was a very important momentum or moment at that time to get that biological opinion. The other one was the National Marine Fisheries Service biological opinion. That's for the salmon, steelhead, and green sturgeon. And we got the draft of that in 2009. And so we thought we were about ready to get that one completed. Shortly after that, in 2010, we got our water quality certification from the State Water Board. So these are all just milestone events you have to do in a relicensing. So we got that water board permit. And so after that, really the last big permit we had was that biological opinion from the National Marine Fisheries Service. And at that time, we thought it was pending, it was about to happen. And 7 years later, we finally got the final of that document. So there was this big gap in time that occurred from 2009 to the end of 2016. So at that point, we really felt like, okay, we have all the packages complete, we've got all of our hurdles out of the way, and we expected the license to be issued probably sometime in the latter part of 2017. Well, as you all know, there was an event that happened in February 2017 that got in the way of that, and so we've been kind of in dealing with the aftermath of that ever since then. With the spillway, I'm talking about the spillway emergency, and so we have made some alterations, obviously, to the spillway and to that area up there. So we submitted a large amendment to the current license to incorporate that whole event, the new facility, some environmental issues we dealt with at the time during that whole process. So we still haven't gotten the completed approval of our amendment from FERC yet on that package of materials that we've sent in. So we're still waiting for that. And so we feel like, and this is to answer a question everyone's always asked, when's the license going to get issued? It wouldn't make sense for FERC to issue the new license before they got the current license kind of finished up. So we're expecting that current package to be a decision made on it sometime soon. We expect it any time, really, and it's going to include an amendment to the environmental impact report and everything. So there's a lot of detail that FERC had to go through, but we figure they're going to issue that first, and after that, then that would pave the way for the new license to get issued. So I'm just using the crystal ball. I doubt we would get a new license before they get this current issue resolved. That new package will include, basically probably an approval of the environmental work that we've done so far. When we had to move a bald eagle nest, there were some elderberry bushes that we had to move, and so we documented all of that. And so we feel that they're probably just going to approve that, and they may come up with some new conditions. We're not sure, but they could. As far as the recreation components, there may be some activity on that as well. We don't know yet. So we're still waiting to get that completed package from FERC first, and then we feel like it would probably be after that they would issue the new license. Now, that doesn't mean they have to follow that process, but that would seem to make sense in this world of procedures that we live in. So anyway, so that's that's kind of where we are. We started back in 2000. We started that process, submitted everything by 2006, got those permits by 2016. We had the whole package done, and now we're just basically waiting for FERC to take further action.
So, in the words of Bill Cochran, 6 more months?
Yeah, that used to be we really did, we honestly believed that it was 6 months out. And, we used to say that, and then, 2 years later, they'd ask us, well, probably about 6 months from now. So, anyways, yeah, I'm not optimistic on 6 months anymore. So, anyways, next slide, please. Okay, so this is just something from a brochure that we had put together back in 2006. So I know some of the numbers are a little outdated. The SBF number isn't outdated, but some of the other ones are, probably would need to get updated. But this basically just identifies the different elements of the settlement agreement and with some approximate costs in relation to one another. So most of this will not be triggered until the new FERC license is issued. With the exception of the SBF, there was a component, as you know, I mean, we're implementing it right now, of the SBF that was pre-license issuance, but the environmental components, the recreation components, those are all waiting issuance of the new FERC license. So we have about $500 million of environmental improvements we'll be implementing when the new license is issued. That is a lot of environmental enhancements along the Feather River corridor. It'll be the largest restoration event to occur, or restoration package to occur in Feather River history, really. And so there's also a historic properties management plan to address cultural resources matters. Sorry about that. And a fuel load management plan, which we've drafted the fuel load management plan. That was a requirement to do that right away, but as far as implementation, the requirement wasn't to implement the fuel load management plan until after the new license was issued. But several years ago now, boy, probably close to 10 years ago, we decided that seems like wildfire is becoming, more and more of a threat. So we started implementing some components of that fuel load management plan. And then, as you know, over the last 4 years, about 60% of the entire Feather River watershed is now burned. So I'm glad that we started doing that work when we did, and we're going to continue to be implementing components of that fuel load management plan, and then partnering with, CAL FIRE and state parks, and doing a lot of work in these partnerships that are forming now. So that's definitely an evolving situation with the fuel load management plan right now. And then lastly, a recreation plan, which I think I talked about at a previous meeting, but I'll have a slide about the recreation plan coming up. So a new recreation plan for the Lake Orville State Recreation Area, and that's for the area of our project that's within the FERC boundary. Next slide, please. Okay, so from the settlement agreement, this is the actual. This is the first couple paragraphs anyway of the project supplemental benefits fund requirement in the settlement agreement. And so I just wanted to read a little bit of this, just so everyone is aware of what the original intent of the SBF is, and what the thinking was at the time. And I really like the way that this paragraph 1.1 is written. And it says the SBF is to allow the benefits of the Orville facilities to be extended into the local communities in the vicinity of the FERC boundary. And that part about the vicinity of the FERC boundary is important because the FERC recreation plan is only within the FERC boundary. It's the FERC jurisdictional area. It's a bunch of recreation requirements and projects and trails and boat ramps, and those are all the things that are in the recreation plan. But it was recognized early in those negotiations back in the 2000s that there's some areas that are outside of the recreation boundary, outside of the FERC boundary, that are important as well, including the Orville area. And so that was really the thought process which led to the SBF was let's figure out a way to allow the benefits of the Orville facilities to extend into the community here. And so that's really was the genesis of the SBF fund. And again, this was inserted in the document just so everyone always will remember what the intent of the SBF was all about. Next slide, please. Okay, so and this is from the website, the City of Orville website. There's a link to the SBF, and just wanted to point out there's a lot of great information. It's a wonderful website. Actually, has a lot of good background information about the SBF, where the funding has gone. It's got, of course, our meeting summaries and agendas and everything else. But there's also quite a bit of information about where the money's been allocated and an explanation of the SBF itself. So I just wanted to do a shout out to really it's a great website, and really appreciate the City of Orville and the work they've done on it. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is, if you could scroll up a little bit more, hopefully we can get all this on the page. So this is a slide of a summary of the expenditures, basically what the requirements are for the supplemental benefits fund, and then what we've spent so far and where we're going. So the total dollar amount, if you add the whole supplemental benefits fund up, is a little over $61 million. About $11 million of that has been spent already. And so there's a little bit left of that. When the settlement agreement was signed, the settlement agreement was put into the Appendix B of the license application. So it wasn't dependent upon FERC approval. So DWR has a contractual obligation to satisfy the supplemental benefits fund, and that's what the Appendix B list was for. And so the Appendix B list doesn't need to wait until the new license is issued in order to start implementing those components. So that's the reason why we were actually able to start the SBF right away, which we did. So there was besides the $5 million that had already been dedicated to the Riverbend Park project, there was an initial payment of $1.9 million that was made to the SBF. And so that went into a group of projects that went out the door over the course of the first few years. When it became apparent that the new license wasn't going to get issued right away, was getting delayed and everything, this was back around 2011, 2012 or so, the SBF Steering Committee sent a letter to FERC and asked if there could be advance payments made against the $4 million commitment that was also in the, that was like the next pot of money. That $4,135,000 was not required to be given out until the license was signed and accepted by DWR. DWR started making advance payments against that $4,135,000. And so that occurred in a series of payments at $100,000 a year. Back in 27, with all this going on, DWR advanced $3 million to the committee, and that's some of the money that we saw being discussed a moment ago for these different projects that are going on. So of that $4,135,000, there's $135,000 left. So we would have dispensed that money last year, but the COVID requirements that we had some a budget crisis basically in the state of California, and so the governor put the kibosh on all non-essential spending across the state of California. And this, since it wasn't a requirement yet, this our program here fell into that category. So in any event, those restrictions have been lifted. There's $135,000 left, and so we intend to proceed with providing that funding to the SBF committee. And that's, I think we're going to talk a little bit later, or you guys can talk a little bit later about that letter that's going to go to DWR. So we'll have to do a new contract. Instead of amending our old contract since it lapsed, we're going to need a new contract. So anyway, but that's how much money is left. There's there's $135,000 left. Once the new license is issued and accepted by DWR, there will be $1 million a year provided to the SBF as part of that commitment that's in the document. So that still is there, and that will be coming. And I should point out, that's for a 50-year license term. There's kind of a prorated, if it's a 45-year license term, it would be something less than that and so forth. But we're certainly hoping for a 50-year license, and it would be $1 million a year. So, and Jordan, there'll be a summary of this provided after the meeting, right? So if people will be able to see these slides.
Yes, I can. We have this PowerPoint from you now. I can send it out to this committee, and I can also put it on our website.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, and then I just wanted to give a shout out to the Feather River Conceptual Plan. This was actually something that was funded by this committee and prepared for this committee back a few years ago. Just going to read the quote in the bottom right. This is actually from the document. The conceptual plan is to provide important information, context, and detail in support of identifying and developing projects and groups of projects that meet the mission of the SBF. So this was a document that was prepared by the SBF to give basically proponents of projects ideas on how to implement SBF funding. So I would just wanted to just point to this. It's sitting on the shelf right now. It's certainly available to anybody that wants to. I think you can actually, there's a link from the website to get to this document. And so it's just a really good reference and provide a lot of good ideas on how to develop the Feather River corridor in the downtown area.
Yes, so the link to this is on our website. I believe it was recently sent to everyone in this committee as well. There are also physical ones available, I believe for purchase, probably for no cost for this committee, but there's also physical available.
I actually have one on my coffee table, so.
Oh, good.
It's a beautiful,
Yeah, it is a beautiful book.
it was very well done. It's a beautiful coffee table book. It's large, but.
Thank you.
Does the subcommittee member, Ms. Canas, have her copy?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh.
You know what? I left most of the documents behind not paper.
Right.
No.
I know she was on the subcommittee that actually put that document together, if I recall right. Yeah.
Okay, next slide, please. So I just wanted to give a quick update on our the work we're doing up at Lake Orville right now. This is kind of an old slide that I had presented before, but just wanted to show this one of the facilities that we've built since the spillway emergency. During that time, we had to close down the spillway boat ramp for an extended period of time, which was our biggest boat ramp facility and parking lot. So it triggered a group of projects from the future settlement agreement that we decided to implement now. And so one of them, this picture you're seeing right here, this is the Bidwell Stage 2 parking lot. We doubled the parking lot in size. Used to be a kind of a dirt gravel parking lot. So we concreted the parking lot. We added boat ramp lanes. And we did a variety of other projects up at Lake Oroville. This is an old slide I know because it says 30 million. It actually is close. It's over 40 million now when you add up everything that we've done or are in the process of doing. So we have a project that's under construction right now at Loafer Point, and that's the new boat ramp facility that we built out beyond. There's a Loafer Creek boat ramp. Well, now we have a brand new boat ramp facility, Loafer Point boat ramp, and so that's under construction right now. We have another project, the Lakeside Access Road, which is not a recreation project, but there are going to be some recreation benefits. But I just want to give everyone a heads up. That's going to be starting up very shortly. It's going to be a concrete road. If you remember during the during the spillway emergency, they had built a gravel construction road that went from the right abutment parking lot where the monuments are on top of Oroville Dam. It actually extended down in front of the entrance chute to the spillway gates. And it was a construction road, and so they had to demobilize it when they were done with the construction. Well, we're actually going to go back in and build an actual concrete road in that area. It needs to be concrete because it goes into the lake bed of Lake Oroville below the high water mark. So this is going to allow people to be able to drive into the spillway recreation area and not have to go through the highway patrol checkpoints. So, it's provides us with additional security in the area, and certainly is going to be a benefit to recreation is at Lake Oroville. And this will be when Lake Oroville is down, which is this year would have been the entire year we've had use of that road. So I just want everyone to know you're going to start seeing some construction coming up. They're mobilizing right now, and so that's another project. So that's at the spillway area. We have the Loafer Point project, which is the boat ramp project.
So.
The Burma Road, not at this time. So, oh, good.
Is that road you're talking about, is that where the peninsula, you used to be able to walk down and swim, and then they've since like removed it so you can't walk down there and swim anymore, and there's keep out signs, so you'll actually be where the monuments are at the end of the dam, able to access that area?
So the road will extend from that parking lot that you're talking, yes, where the monuments are, into the lake bed there. So if you remember where that road was, where they had built during that construction, during the spillways construction, they had built a gravel road down in that area. You may not have seen it actually because it was closed, the area was closed, so probably, I come to think of it, that you wouldn't have seen it.
So you're gonna go take a road down in front of the spillway entry gates?
Yes, and we'll put barricades, so, it'll be, or K barrier, so no one will be able to drive over to the spillway gates themselves.
So that road will take you direct to the state park kiosk?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So we'll, configure the parking lot. It'll get you over to the concrete boat ramp area, and then also the gravel boat ramp area when the water is at real low levels. Let's see, next slide, please. Okay, and this is just a slide that showed the group of projects that we constructed at Lake Oroville. So we've done several projects in the process of completing others around the marinas, boat ramps on the north end of the lake and the south end of the lake. Next slide, please. Okay, so wanted to just do a quick description of the FERC recreation plan. I hear a lot of people talk about the recreation plan, and there's a few things I wanted to point out just to make sure everyone on this committee was clear about the way the recreation plan works and relates to our activities at Lake Oroville. So we have a current recreation plan. This plan was approved by FERC back in 1994. This is the recreation plan that we're implementing to this day. It replaced the previous recreation plan that we had. Remember back in the day, in the late 80s, early 90s, we had a lot of controversy with that previous recreation plan. FERC said you need to revise it. We did that. There was a lot of back and forth. We created the new recreation plan. FERC approved it in 1994. It established the Oroville Recreation Advisory Committee that's been functioning ever since. And that is our current recreation plan. And that is the recreation plan that will continue until the new license is issued. At that point, our new recreation plan will then take over. And that's the one that we developed during the settlement agreement process. And it will not take effect until the new license is issued. So we have a current recreation plan, has its recreation facilities and maintenance and all of those things. There will be a new one that's going to supersede that one. So I just wanted to point that out, that when we talk about the recreation plan, there's a difference between our current one and then the future one that will be implemented when the new license is issued. Go ahead, Dave.
So just so I'm clear, so all of the recreational improvements that DW has been working on thus far are all part of the existing recreation plan and not part of the recreation plan as part of the settlement agreement. Is that right?
That is correct. So what we did was when spillway, oops, sorry, when the spillway emergency happened, we wanted to look at what we could do to try to offset the impacts from the having that spillway boat ramp and parking lot closed and the trails in that area. So we looked at the future recreation plan, and there were some projects in there that would help that effort. So what we did was we went to FERC and we said, okay, we would like to amend the current recreation plan and add these projects to the current recreation plan and just implement them now. And so FERC agreed, talked to ORAC and other stakeholders. We got, sent that package to FERC. FERC approved it. And so what they did was they amended our current recreation plan and made those projects part of our current recreation plan. So now we don't have to worry about them in the new license because we've already, we'll have had them completed. So they are now part of the existing recreation plan and, are part of that package for, for maintenance and for, operations.
I have a question. So you say you've spent roughly $40 million now before the signing, right, for recreation? Did you say that earlier, something like that?
Yeah, well, some of the projects are still in progress, so when
okay.
they're done, it'll be over 40 million.
Okay, so, and I know that this isn't, it's kind of blowing my mind a little bit, because then once the thing is signed, you've spent $40 million in the last, 15 years or something, maybe?
In the last 4 years.
4 years, okay, 40, so 10 million a year. So $1 million a year isn't going to go very far, is it, when the license is signed?
So
Especially if it's 50 years. It's $1 million for 50.
So the million a year is for the supplemental benefits fund. That doesn't include the recreation projects up at Lake Oroville.
Thank you.
So
that's where I was getting confused.
I probably should have pointed that out.
I'm sitting here thinking, I don't think this is going to work.
On that one slide from our brochure, I think it amounts to about $500 million for the recreation at Lake Oroville, for the recreation plan.
I probably fell asleep right that time.
And just a question in that regard, when we start talking about dollars versus projects, the list of the projects are itemized that DWR is going to do.
Yes.
So the reality is, the more, and I don't want to beat too much of the current issue drum, but the more inflation we have, you're really spending more than $1 billion, because the projects will likely cost more 10 years from now than they would today.
Every project that we planned for just in the last 4 years, and well, I shouldn't say every project. There were a couple that came in under budget, but yes, when you look at a lot of the new requirements for cultural resource compliance, all the new surveys that need to be done, the ADA, so things that we built that were in full compliance, that were ADA back in the 90s, were not when we went back there. So we had to do a lot of retrofits and everything else. So it was more expensive than we.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because as I read it, it was a project-specific list.
It is.
And then, so the $1 billion really is just an estimate. It's likely going to be far more than that. I wanted to make sure that I didn't misread it, and it was, we're only going to spend $1 billion, so now which of these projects are we not going to do?
That's correct. It is a list of projects.
It is project-specific, and you're
Yes.
going to be, whatever the cost is when you do the project, it is.
Yes.
Great.
One last question. I think this was requested a while ago, and I think you guys may have put together this table, but having it updated would be good, is to have the projects that you guys have completed and which of those projects have moved over from the settlement agreement in the new license to ones that you've implemented in your current license. And the reason I'm asking, if somebody went all Rip Van Winkle on us out there and disappeared and didn't know any of this was going on and just showed up the day the license was issued, and then found out that all these projects that they thought were going to be implemented in the new license, and if they were part of the Recreation Advisory Committee and were waiting for that body to be convened to provide input on those recreation projects, they might have some questions. So it would be helpful just to know what has moved from the settlement agreement into the current license. And just also for everybody just to keep track of what's been done.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, I can take that as
What-
an action item.
And what has yet to be done, so I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, we've done that internally just because we've had that same situation where, just for our own record keeping, just trying to keep an eye on what's what. So I can do that as an action item for a future meeting. One other thing I wanted to point out, when I talk about the recreation plan and it has a list of projects, that is correct. The SBF, though, is a different type of agreement where basically DWR's requirement for the SBF is to ensure the funding is there, and it is the funding that we will ensure. It is this committee's job to decide where that money is going to go, following the rules that are in the SBF. So I want to point that out, that the SBF is different in that it is a fixed amount of money. So
I have a question for you, as I always do. Thanks for being here, Mr. C. I think the biggest complaint that, often gets thrown out there, just as a question, is the $1 million and, the ROI every year going down, and even 10 years ago. And anyway, is there any foreseeable possibility of the money, instead of being $1 million per year, that it just be given in a lump sum? Because if a future steering committee, I'm not sure if it's even legally possible, but were to put that on a very conservative fund with a return, I mean, if we got 2% per year, that'd be pretty close to what we're looking for. I think a little math here got me to 2,500,000. I think it was right. Excuse me for a second.
Well, if I can piggyback up what you're saying while you're doing your math, what Scott Huber said, so your project's costs are going up, so it may not be 40 million, and that's increasing, but our $1 million, our purchase power is going down. So are you going to increase that $1 million? No.
So my question is, and maybe you can answer this, if it was given in a lump sum, if we only put on a very, very conservative fund and got 2% interest per year, which I would think would be too hard, that'd be $1 million a year. So if we got 3%, I mean, that fund would only, for us, it'd be, based on our own investments and whatnot. Is that even a possibility? And is that possible for this committee then, if we got a lump sum, to put it in some kind of a very, very conservative market?
It's not possible without an amendment to the settlement agreement. One of the issues that we have looked at previously is how do you amend a settlement agreement that contains parties that no longer exist anymore? It's a difficult thing to do. There are several of those organizations don't even exist anymore. Now, we can work out some of those issues. The main issue would be, I think, if you wanted to request some front loading of that. It's possible that DWR could say, well, okay, all of our analyses were based on some regular level of inflation, and the $1 million a year that was calculated into it, that's what we all agreed to. So then I could see them coming back with, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying don't ask for it, but I could see them coming back with some other argument about, but hey, that's what we agreed to, that's what we knew, that all of our calculations were understanding that. I mean, I get it. I'm not saying don't make the ask, and
Legally, that's possible.
Well,
with an amendment to
legally,
an
almost
agreement.
anything is possible. The question is whether it's feasible.
Come on, Scott, let's do this.
There's a lot of stuff that's possible, but the question is it feasible?
It would
I don't
just
know
be-
the answer to that, but it's certainly something that this committee, if you would like to make that request, we can certainly do that. It would need formal action from this body, but we can do that. The question is, will it be well received? And B, how do we go about doing that? One of the concerns that would have to be taken into account from the state and from DWR's standpoint is, if they were to do that, how do they guarantee that the funds are going to be utilized in the manner that it was intended? And by that, what I mean is, they were intending to have a long-term impact year over year over year over year for 50 years, right? The question is, how do you guarantee that you don't have some committee down the road that says, well, gee, we really have these big needs now, so let's spend more money now, and then you don't have money in the future. I'm not saying those can't be overcome. They are. They can be overcome. Those are issues that certainly we can deal with. But, I'm not suggesting don't ask. Legally, can it be done? Sure, we can legally find a way to do it. Is there the political will to do it? I don't know.
Sounds to me like it makes a lot of sense, because if you had that money and it was, fixed so it had to be invested and stay there, instead of getting 1 million a year, if Scott's math is right, you get 2 or 2.5 million a year that you could actually spend. It just kind of, I thought it sounds to me like a good idea, unless I'm missing something.
I would think 2% would be pretty easy to get. I mean, if we got 4%, gosh, that's
Oh, we're
a
rich.
lot more.
Not to put any ice water in that, but CalPERS makes the same estimates
Yeah.
every year.
And they're getting what? They're getting 4.
Some years they're not.
Some years they're not.
Some
I think
years
this
they're
year they
getting
got
negative.
20, right?
Some years they're getting negative.
Yeah. And this year you got 20, right?
Which is why they continually come back and say, by the way, you
Right.
have this
Yeah.
unfunded
The
actual
only
liability.
thing, the difference here would be they're back paying promises, whereas this would be whatever comes from
Sure.
the surplus.
Yeah, no,
would
no, I
then-
get
And anything
that.
we didn't spend would go back into the fund, but.
Get it. No, I get it. I think, and remember, this isn't free money from DWR. This is all coming from the state water contractors, who are also, major partners in this. They also would have to sign off on all of that as well. Again, I'm not saying that
They will.
that they all wouldn't agree to that. I'm not saying they would. I'm not saying they wouldn't. What I'm saying is, if you want to do that, then you can certainly request that. It would be a significant departure from what was agreed to by the parties. Not that that's not a possibility, and I'll make the same statement again. We can draft these documents, these legal documents, to come up with almost anything to be legal. The parties obviously have to agree upon it. Will they? I don't know.
I think you have to remember, this is seed money. It's one-time money. We probably would be better off receiving the 1 million a year and then taking care of 1 or 2 big projects that will go on beyond this. Because that's like the example of Riverbend Park. That was an obviously great investment. It wouldn't have happened without this settlement agreement. So our committee will have the challenge to find that project that's going to be the perpetual revenue generator.
The
in
challenge
future.
will be to find a project you can do for $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
I
Well,
mean, that's the problem. It's
I think the $1
it's
million is easy.
not much anymore.
It's not much either, but it gives us ability to bond a project if we need to. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities both ways to go at. I think renegotiating a different amount is probably going to be very time-consuming versus looking at the big project. We need to be seeding a project or 2 or 3. This is not O&M money. This is one-time capital spend money to build those projects that are going to, survive all of us and survive this committee. So those are just thoughts in the strategy of the long term.
Would you like to continue, Eric?
Sure, next slide, please. Okay, next slide. I think I had that redundant slide there. Okay, so I remember one of the things that this slide is basically on a request from a few meetings ago. Someone had asked, what are the projects, where are they going to occur there? That's in the the new recreation plan. So again, I know it's small font. This will be in that package you guys will have, so you'll be able to see that. But our recreation plan is available on our website. It's at the bottom of that page there, so you can read it in detail. It's hundreds of pages of long, a lot of maps. There's a great trail map, by the way. That's why I look at it all the time. So a couple different trail maps, the current trails, and then what's in the new settlement agreement, the map. So, but then descriptions of all these projects. But this is just a list that I teased out that identifies the projects and the project locations. Next slide, please. Okay, that might be it. Okay. Okay, and Yeah, as Jordan's agreed to do, it'll be in the package from the meeting, so you'll be able to see this. And certainly, email me, contact me anytime if you have any questions about, these particular projects or anything else. Just, one other comment I wanted to make. I'm glad that, Scott, you mentioned the state water contractors, because that's, they're, one of the major partners in this agreement. So this, when I talk about DWR providing money, when it comes to SBF, this is state water contractor funding that we're talking about. So they're, they're definitely part of the the agreement with the SBF. And we have the document. It's I think it's actually in the meeting notes of this meeting. The full text of the settlement agreement, SBF commitment, and so everything that I'm presenting here is what's already been agreed to. I mean, and that's what I plan to stick to. So if there's anything that does change, there'd be a huge process that goes way beyond my pay grade to get that completed. So just wanted to point that out. When I'm talking about what we've agreed to and implementing that, because that's where my responsibility area is.
Committee Member DeLong?
A couple questions. Is the lake, when people can access it now, is it going to be a 5-mile-an-hour lake with the new Loafer launch ramp? Last I heard, I think I saw something where it's 5 miles an hour because of the vegetation and islands and.
Yes, so that was because of some pretty extraordinary conditions we had with the lake being as low as it was. The trees from when they built Oroville Dam, they had actually cleared trees down to a certain level, and we're starting to see the tops
You
of
can
those.
see 'em coming out
The
now.
trees below that level. Yeah, it was crazy. So, anyways, they've now gone back under, and so I don't anticipate there being a need for that.
So the new Loafer launch won't go to that level?
The new the reason for that speed limit restriction, and you couldn't boat at night, was because of all those hazards that were coming out of the water with the low lake levels. The lake's jumped 30 feet in the last 5 days, so that's all gone underwater now. So
When you extend the ramp to its fullest, the Loafer ramp, the new extension, is it going to go to that level? And when it reaches that level, is it going to be a 5-mile-an-hour lake?
we are going to build Loafer down as low as feasible, as we just learned a lesson on what can happen in our watershed. We were grubbing and planning and getting things ready to pour concrete over the next 2 weeks down in the lower reaches of the lake, and that work has had to be suspended. We're now figuring out what we're going to do at Loafer Stage 2. We are going to do some work as far down as we can get it, basically. But we're not going to be able to, this year, not going to be able to do that construction work down to 640 because, right now I think the lake's at 659 and rising. So.
What level does it become a 5-mile-an-hour lake? I'm just curious.
That's something that parks determine,
okay.
and it'd probably be best to ask them. I'm not exactly sure what they're, but that was something that just evolved. We'd never been as low as we were this last summer, and so that was something they started seeing. Even though we got to a point we couldn't launch boats at Lake Oroville, the marinas have boats in them. Those folks were going out, and so there was, just in dealing with those hazards, that was something that parks thought was necessary to put the 5 mile per hour.
Okay. One more question, too. Why was Loafer Point chosen instead of extending the bidwell further? Does it just get steep there and you're no longer to access that area?
Well, we still are going to do the Bidwell project. It's just that we had started this Loafer Point project as one of these relicensing, one of the spillway emergency projects. So we already had a project that was mobilized. We had a contractor down there. We needed to do some additional engineering to do that lower section to get that designed. But we already had a contract mobilized, and we're already working in that location, moving dirt around and everything. So we decided to focus our efforts on Loafer Point. But we do still intend to extend Bidwell down to 640. So it didn't go away. It's just this year we decided to focus on Loafer.
Can I show? I brought a couple slides. Is now the time to do that?
Is that okay with
Yes,
chairperson?
absolutely. Please.
So, and this is no way to offend anybody in the room. It's just it's what is being said as opposed to what's going on. So this sign is posted on the north side of the dam, directly above where the spillway incident occurred. You guys can read it, States Park property, all features are protected. Violators will be prosecuted as provided in section 5008 of the resource code. This is your heritage, help guard it. So, pretty interesting sign. Next slide, if you can. We've talked about you asking your supervisors, what can be done to maybe do some other stuff in the area. And obviously, this agreement's very old and a lot of stuff has changed over time. California Department of Natural Resources Director, Wade Crowfoot. So his vision is to restore, protect, manage the state's natural and historical and cultural resources for current and future generations using creative approaches and solution-based science, collaboration, and respect for all communities. His key priorities are expanding access to parks, natural places, and outdoor recreation for all Californians. So that's obviously a cultural resource. And you used to be able to sit there and look at Loafer Point, there was nothing on it. And I know it seems to most people like there's nothing on Loafer Point, why not let's just put a boat ramp in here? Sounds like a great idea. Now you sit at that exact same spot, you look across the drainage there and you see a bathroom and a boat ramp. His budget priorities are investing in access for all to our natural resources, like parks, beaches. In total, $65.1 million has been proposed to help expand upon the work that State Parks has done through its parks for all initiatives to improve access and expand. The park system funds would go towards improving facilities in urban areas, acquiring land and expanding parks, and improving access for the underserved population, and establishing a new state park. And we're also the first state to adopt the 30 by 30 principle, which you know what that is, 30 by 30? You've heard that?
I've heard it, I'm not sure.
So 30 by 30 is the available open space. We're supposed to save 30% of it by the year 2030. And there's also 50 by 50 where we're supposed to do 50% by 2050. Next slide. So you can see there the spillway and the land adjacent to the spillway. And I know you're aware of this, and I'm not saying this is your fault. That was beautiful, like heritage oak trees. I mean, it was really, really a beautiful area. You could ride through there or walk through there. You felt like you were getting out away from everything. And now it looks like the picture on the right side after the spillway incident. So my point is things have changed. Priorities have changed. Why are we stuck with old priorities, old projects that don't match today's current situation that we're living in? And why aren't we going for funding to improve areas like this through the Natural Resource Department? Does that make any sense? Is there a way to do that? Is there a way to say, okay, this is an underserved community? This has been taken away from them, because personally I feel like that was my recreation and it's been taken away from me. There is stuff out there that's not going to be replaced. It's not even on the table to be replaced. But that's my heritage and I'm supposed to protect it. How do I get that back? Can we get out of an old agreement and start working in a new direction? Is that possible, or are we still stuck with building boat ramps and not that boat ramps are a bad thing, but why are we doing two? I just don't agree with where the money is being sent. And I know this may not be the place for it, the SBF, and I get the SBF is just to deal with the Oroville corridor, but how do we, as a citizen and a member of this community, can you see where that could be upsetting and we're losing stuff? Like all this stuff is for everybody. Your department too. Your mission statement is to, enhance the human environment.
Right, I hear what you're saying. Very familiar with that area. A little while ago when I mentioned how we're on hold because of the FERC action, we actually have a rehabilitation plan for that area, which is the first step towards what we're calling our restoration plan for that hillside. It's on hold right now until we we hear back from FERC. So we have not been able to go in there yet and implement our restoration activities up there. Once FERC issues the amendment, I'm sure that's going to be a big part of it is that they're going to want us to be doing the restoration work. But we've been told we can't do anything until they take action. So we are on hold, but I completely understand what you're saying about that hillside up there. As far as the resources secretary, I don't have I don't have a specific answer for you on that. I mean, we certainly implement. We're part of the Natural Resources Agency, and we'll follow their directives. So, but I can tell you specifically in that area by the spillway, we have a plan that has a first step developed and ready to go. It's just on hold right now until we hear back from FERC.
Right.
And I should also point out, we're not waiting for funding. I mean, we have, it's right. We have the funding. We haven't been given the green light yet to implement it.
So is it possible for you to go to the resource department and explain to them what's going on here and maybe get some of that funding or for new parks, et cetera, that's supposed to go towards parks to do better things in this area? Because the way I understand it now, there's really not a lot that's going to be done for recreation in that area, or like we've talked about a walkway around the river and bridges and stuff like that everybody wants. Is there a way to get some of that funding directed here in your knowledge?
Well,
or
I just speaking to the area you have on the screen right here, we have a restoration plan that we have the first phase of that we are already developed and are ready to go on it. So we are going to be addressing that area.
Okay.
So as far as like bridges and that sort of thing, that's sort of a different subject, different area of what we're talking about.
it seems like there's money and the initiative out there to want to do things like this, and I know that it's.
If I can piggyback very quickly, and I'll get to Committee Member Thompson, can you present these projects at the next meeting so we can see what you're supposedly talking about? The so-called restoration work. I think we'd like to actually see before you implement anything, so that we can have actual input.
Well, so it is the really with the first step of it was the site remediation that you do after a construction project. Grass seed, erosion control measures, those types of activities. So I can look at see what I can put together for the committee to let you know what's going to happen. The Our plan was to implement that first step immediately, and then develop a restoration plan that was going to be a more long-term restoration plan that was going to involve, the site remediation for the recreation, the trail that's over there. We did, reestablish the trail that's over there, but we definitely like to make some improvements. So we're just, and that we haven't developed yet. So when I talk about the difference between restoration and the initial steps right after a construction is kind of two separate things. So we are going to be developing a full-scale restoration plan for that area, and that we want to have public involvement on. But we can't go anywhere till we have our FERC. We basically get the go-ahead from FERC to start that.
Well, I'd just add that restorations like planting a tree. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. We've already been waiting 4 years. This should have been done in the beginning, so I'm surprised you don't actually have the plan laid out.
Well, again, we need to, we don't want to write the plan until we get public comments. And we don't want to, we can't start that process until we get approved to be able to start that process, and we haven't done that yet. So we thought we were going to get this. Now keep in mind, the construction was going on 4 years ago, so you couldn't have done it 4 years ago because the construction didn't get completed until 2019. So it was in 2019 that we wanted to go out with a contractor to get out there and actually start that first step. In the meantime, develop our restoration plan. And so we've been told to not take any action until we get that approval from FERC. So it's a little frustrating for us because we have budget, we're ready to go, but we have been told we are not able to proceed until they issue their amendment.
Chair Fowler, if I could for just a minute, I think there's DWR is somewhat handcuffed in this, and I will tell you right now, I don't think this is going to be a shock to anybody. I have been very critical of DWR in the past. This particular issue is not theirs. This is one where they've been told by FERC, don't touch it until we give you the green light. And so what I would suggest is if you would like some quicker action on that, maybe the way to get to FERC is through chatting with a congressman. and see what kind of pressure the congressman can put on a federal agency to speed up the process, to give the green light to DWR to start doing those public hearings and instead of their immediate remediation, getting to the next stage, which is the planning and then all of the other things they need to do, which includes public comment. As you mentioned, you want to have some input on it. I think probably because it is in FERC's hands, the best, I think, avenue to go is to figure out how do you break that logjam. There's nothing like congressional oversight or inquiries from elected officials to say, hey, it's been a long time. What are you doing? I know it works really well with the FAA. I believe it works with FERC as well, to a certain degree. Again, generally speaking, they don't like to have elected officials inquiring as to how come you're taking so long to make a decision. So maybe that's a good place to go, because in all fairness, DWR they are handcuffed on this one until they get the green light. Once they get the green light, then it's off to the races, and I would hope the DWR would have all of their, procedures in place ready to go. We'll call it shovel ready on the procedure, right? So that they can just start rolling it out and saying, okay, great, here are the plans. Now let's get the public input. Now let's get, things moving, instead of, gee, we need to create the procedure by which we get all this put together. And I expect that they've already got that done, ready to go once they get the green light. But they've got to get the green light.
So I guess my question would be, would this committee have to have solidarity in writing a letter or a communication to our congressman? Or is it something that we can kind of just do as a casual member?
I am a fan of the all of the above approach. I think this committee could send a letter to the congressman. I think anybody that does have a contact or a connection to the congressman, and I'm not limiting it to just, Congressman LaMalfa. I think, the senators also have the same, we've got two senators that also have a vested interest in these lands, and anyone that has a connection to any of those three elected officials, federal elected officials, I think would absolutely have the ability to send a letter to FERC inquiring as to why it's taking so long.
Well, for the committee members, I'd be happy to draft a letter, or we could individually each draft a letter, whatever the committee would like to do, if they're willing.
I'm fine.
I think one letter is good.
One letter's good, yeah.
Okay.
Draft it up. Sounds good to me.
And if I could offer something up, the commission is in the process of setting up an Office of Public Participation, and they're looking for input on that. It would probably be a good idea for this committee and more broadly within the community to engage in that. So I would say that this commission is actually interested in what you're talking about, which hasn't always been the case with the commission. So I would consider looking into that, and I can get some information to you all about that process. That's thing one. And then thing two, what I hear from members of the committee is wanting to have some input into what that restoration plan looks like. And I get it, Eric, that right now a lot of it's just like stabilizing the hillside, that kind of stuff. But even more than like, what are you planning, trying to lay out the process for how can members of this community or this committee and the community writ large engage in that process to make sure that the outcomes are what they're looking for? Because I think it's a great point. That is not the same place it was 10 years ago.
That's before the SBF agreement as well.
It looked different than that before. But I'm just,
Loss of recreation, too.
Right, so trying to figure out, okay, this is what we have up there now, what do we want that to look like? I mean, there's plans in there that were in there for trails and a bunch of other things that we've talked about. And so just trying to figure out what do we do in this instance on that new landscape that makes sense up there, and be able to, everybody be able to understand how are they going to be able to provide input into that plan.
Okay, Committee Member Thompson.
Thank you. Mr. C, just follow up on our previous conversation at the last SBF about the question, inquiry you're going to have, you promised to have for the higher ups and regarding spending money down below. How did that go?
can you clarify your question?
Sure, I was sitting more towards Dave, and we had a back and forth on trails. You'd recently went to Idaho. We talked about the green belt there in Idaho. And
Right.
We were talking about the 42 million that was spent on the spillways, and I had asked you to ask the higher ups in regards spending some money on this side of the dam, and you said that you would do that.
Well, what I asked was just, what our funding commitments were and what, we would spend money on right now. And so the answer I got back was 135,000 until the new license is issued, and then,
No, not for SBF. It was, remember the conversation, maybe you forgot, but the conversation was regarding outside of the SBF funds. Because my conversation to you was money was directed and spent and approved by FERC outside of even the plan, like from my understanding. Anyway, there's money that was presented to FERC, projects that were submitted to FERC for funding outside of SBF that were approved and
we have the projects that were, I showed the boat ramp projects and everything else. So there's that package of things. Those required FERC approval.
Yes.
The SBF doesn't require FERC approval.
Right, so this conversation kind of outside of the conversation that we had last time was outside the SBF. You guys have got projects submitted to the FERC, approved, money spent, and then projects done, like the Loafer Creek extension. My question at that point was, can you ask those higher ups regarding some projects on this side of the dam, such as the green belt that you'd experienced in Boise? And you said you'd ask them to see if that was a possibility.
Well, what I asked was, what funding we are willing to commit to. And basically the answer is the 135,000. We're going to stick with what's in the agreement right now. And, of course, the 135,000 is in advance that we're not required actually to provide until the new license is issued. But we're willing to continue with that, but no more.
So it's totally different answer and question than what we talked about last time. It's not that. So
Well,
that's
Scott, so I mean, are you saying, will DWR build a green belt along the Feather River? Is that the question?
No, the question was specifically, there are projects that DWR outside of the SBF have presented to FERC, such as the parking lots, that were outside of this whole agreement that you guys have presented to FERC, got approved and done, that are all on that side of the dam. So I asked if you would ask them if there was a possibility of spending money on this side for projects such as the green belt. And I know the conversation last time went back to, well, you guys have $1 million per year to do stuff like that. And then we went back and forth, and it was like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about DWR investing on this side of the spillway for recreation, for projects that are outside of the $1 million per year. And your commitment to me was that you would at least ask.
Well, I did have a conversation with my management about, funding in general. The recreation projects you're talking about, Loafer Point, the Bidwell Canyon Stage 2, those projects I showed on the screen a few minutes ago. That was a package of projects to offset impacts from the spillway. And so that is a complete package, and that is it. So we're not going to be doing any other projects to offset that, the spillway. That's the reason why that activity is going on now. We'd hope to get it done sooner than now, but in any event, it's taken a little longer than we thought. So as far as offsetting the impacts of the spillway, we're not going to be doing any additional projects. So that's its own package, and when we get done with that package, that will be it. We're not going to be doing anything else. As far as doing projects down in the area along the Feather River, it's the SBF that we're that we will continue with that commitment, and that's we're not going to be doing anything beyond that commitment.
Eric, very quickly, just for clarity, my interpretation and my recall was that Committee Member Thompson was requesting your approaching your superiors and asking them to be more willing to change their structure of projects in relation from the lake to the river or thereabouts. That's how I interpreted it.
Okay, well, I think, this is a good example. I have a different interpretation from the same conversation, so, it'd be helpful for me if I know, specifically what
Would you be willing to speak to your superiors to see if they change their mind, simply put?
if change their mind about what? I mean,
Some of the projects, so
we-
we could have more focus on the river and the nexus of the river.
Okay, so-
Versus lake projects that people really aren't using.
When it comes to the nexus of the river, it's the SBF. That's the.
I understand that, but
that's
that's,
where- so
that
you're
was his
asking to
request, as I
extend-
understood it.
You want to go expand the SBF?
That was the request as I
or-
understood it.
You want to
That's- that's
expand
it.
the SBF then? Is that?
No, we were like, yes, ask and thou shalt receive. That's basically the premise. Okay, let's move on. Committee member
I guess
Pittman.
I'm just, I need to have something specific. If I'm going to, engage my superiors on a discussion about something, I need to know what it is that,
Right.
I'm asking them for, so.
I think it's, the simpleness is the superiors have to work with the agreements that we have. They can't make up a new agreement. I mean, we have agreements signed in place. They're not going to give us any more money because they don't have any money to give. I mean, that's the simpleness of it here. I think that if anybody wants to speed up the previously agreed upon agreements, we need to send the letters to FERC. We need to send the letters to our congressman. We need to push the process along. The sadness here is FERC is called Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. That when the lake was first built 50 years ago plus now, they only issued a power license, and that was their domain of responsibility. Then along came some legislation that said that FERC shall get involved in recreation activities. And thank you very much to the Congress that just screwed the whole mess up, because FERC shouldn't have a dang thing to do with recreation activities in our community. That's where the problem is laid out in the legislation that occurred. And I don't remember the year that it changed, but that was added to the FERC licensing process. I attended a conference on, it was a worldwide conference on projects all over the world. And nobody had a process like Oroville has. I mean, in British Columbia and New South Wales and in India, they said, what are you people doing in Oroville? With this whole collaborative process you're talking about. And the only reason we're doing it is because the Congress put this additional detail of FERC getting involved in the other activities of a water project. It should have been just left to the power generation license and be done with it. But getting this federal agency involved in our backyard details is where we have the problem here. And that's the problem that I've seen for 10 years plus, going back even to when this whole process started. It should have been a year-long process, but we're at what, how many years now? Is kind of bizarre. So no one in the process here, whether it's say water contractors, DWR, anybody in the process can't do anything unless they've got a previously done agreement. That's the reality. There's no one individual that can make this move any faster other than FERC. And FERC is the one that I think, and it's my observation, is the skunk in the woodpile. And it's just that simple. Because every time we do something, we have to ask them. I mean, I remember even State Parks has to let them know every time a houseboat goes on or off the lake. That's nuts. Why should FERC care? But that's what we need to tell our legislators. Beyond just helping out Oroville, they need to rethink the legislation that gave FERC the horsepower to get involved in other parts of the relicensing issue, which should be just to the power generation, and leave it at that. That's our big frustration, I think, in this room. My original comment was I want to express interest in especially the Monument Hill boat launch facility, the North Forebay campground activity, and possibility of a campground there, and maybe even a campground at the South Forebay, because people without boats are using those facilities immensely. He mentioned how the North Forebay and people without boats got a place to go. Those, I think, are high interest levels you can take back and share with the plans that, example, Monument Hill. That water is the same level year-round. There's people out there every weekend. It's being heavily used because the water is available. It's a great boat place. It also has the wildlife activity. Everybody's out there with kayaks and windsurfing and all those kind of things. I look for maybe a convenience store or a possible shore-mounted marina of some kind at that hip, because that boat ramp is available year-round. And I don't know how we do that, but that's just the interest level I'll throw out back just so you can feed that back to people, because especially the South Forebay is a great waterway. And gosh, if we had a campground or an RV campground there, that would be, off the rails as far as having a campground that has access to water. We're finding out our RV parks in this area are doing extremely well. And it wasn't really planned, especially the casinos. They're full 80% plus. So if we had an RV campground facility at any one of those three places, I think you'd see a huge increase. And that's kind of what we're talking about. You bring people here, the revenue comes, the economic comes. That's the kind of projects that I think are going to benefit us to the future. I know we're doing a lot of things with the lake, but the other facilities that have the static water levels, the four bays, the north, the south forebay, and the after bay, and the boat ramp at the Brabe Road, I think have extremely strong interest. So I would just throw that out there that whatever we do, and I know it's on your list, I appreciate that. It's great to see it on the list because we really didn't think those would be great places. In fact, when I remember the forebay was first built, I thought, who in the world's going to go out here? Until the trees grew up. And the trees came, and then we have a great facility that has, and then the aquatic center came in for being, and now the next step would be to actually have a campground and or RV center. I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be full. It just is. We're seeing that in this area, and you can talk to the casinos. Beyond, we thought it was just the construction crew, but now it's becoming the retirement community, and they're filling those campsites up. So I just encourage that as a long-term thought in those developments, something along those lines. I just wanted to share with you that's what the public feedback I'm getting. So thank you. Appreciate your presentation too. It's good to see the history of this thing.
Okay, this meeting is getting a little long. I know one more comment from committee member DeLong.
That's it. I just wanted to say, can you ask your supervisors about maybe trying to secure some of the funds that are coming available through the Department of Natural Resources and have them spent here on recreation and outdoor activity, because it's a new thing, so I'd hate for us to miss out.
Okay, with that being said, I'd like to move on. Some of us have meetings to go to. Item number 9.
So as we move into regular business, do we need a break or anything? We have 3 regular business items. They shouldn't take too long, but
Move on.
keep moving. Okay, first item, number 9, is an amendment, an extension to agreement number 3280, which is with Feather River Center. It was mentioned earlier in the presentation from Brad with the Feather River Center Aquatic Center that they are seeking an extension. Currently, their contract ends, I believe, February 2022, and they are looking to extend until December 30th, 2022. Staff recommends extending this agreement if it is agreed upon this body.
I would motion we approve that agreement.
Second.
Any discussion? Call to vote.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 1 absent.
Great. Moving right along, regular business number 10 is a letter in support of the 12th Amendment to the Supplemental Benefits Fund Implementation Agreement. This letter is requested of DWR. This is the 12th amendment to this agreement, which would release the next $100,000. As stated by Eric C. with DWR, we have $135,000 left in our agreement, so this would release the next $100,000. And then the next year's agreement or amendment would be the $35,000. So this letter is, we've done one each year, so you're going to see it's very similar verbiage, signed by our fund administrator, which is Mr. Legrone. And this would be a requirement for DWR to release the next funding. So staff is recommending the approval of this. If there is any discussion?
I'll move that we move forward with this and authorize the letter.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? Call to vote, please.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 1 absent.
Great. Moving on to regular business number 11. This item was requested by this committee to be brought back. So unfortunately, Mr. Legrone had a prior engagement they had to get to. So this is the releasing of an RFP for, which is a request for proposals for the SBF program specialist position. So this would be a contract position. That would be, it was requested of this body to be a 1 day a month position. And there is a request for proposals attached that staff has written, and if approved by this body, we would put out for 30 days. In those 30 days, we would call a special meeting of this body to review applications and move forward if an applicant seems fit. So if there is any questions on this or any amendments to the RFP, that would be something that this body could do. Staff recommends releasing for 30 days.
So moved?
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Call to vote, please.
Motion carries with 4 yeses and 1 absent.
So that will be released at 30 days. I'm not sure if we'll get it released tomorrow. If not, we'll get released Monday. And we'll put out for 30 days, and then there will be a special meeting called, like I said, to review those applications. So moving forward, steering committee advisory members and staff comments. First, we've heard from Eric C. today. I'm not sure if he has any more updates from DWR.
I think I've said enough.
Great.
Come on, Eric, talk some
Also, we have state water contractors, if they have any advisory updates.
No update on my end.
Great. Mine is usually a written report, which is not attached to this packet. I can get a written report to you guys. Everything else is going normal. We're processing all the agreements, like you saw everyone today, with open contracts. I'm getting this RFP out, and I can work with individuals on helping with those letters, involving our attorney as well in those letters if you would like. But that is the report at this time from the SBF program specialist.
Okay, so just for clarity, if the committee members or members of the public or anybody would like to make comment about the letter to our congressman, would you please email me or contact me? And I will hopefully formulate that, and I will give a proof to the committee before submitting.
Is that something that we would like as an agenda item for the next meeting, like approval of it, or like revision of it?
It needs to be
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other requests for agenda items?
And what is the length of time that you need to have something placed on the agenda? Do we have to do it right now, or do you have, okay.
No, we have
So what
time.
length of time do you need if a committee member was to want to submit something?
So our next meeting is not until next year, which sounds kind of funny. We probably will call a special meeting. A special meeting will be just based on the RFP proposals, so there wouldn't be any other regular business on that. So the next meeting is scheduled January 26th at 2 p.m. I would need items 2 weeks in advance, would be plenty of time that we could get those items on there.
Very good.
So no, they don't need to be set in stone
Okay.
right now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there anything else? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 4:17. Thank you, everybody.